Welcome, everyone, to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 102. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers. I'm your host, John White, at BJourneyman on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
I'm doing great, John. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A journey to virtual enlightenment.
So let's take a trip.
All right, Nick. Hey, today is part 2 of our discussion with Randall Cook. So this time we're getting more into some of his experiences in wellness coaching and his specific views on healthy eating. I really found this fascinating. I think the first time I was listening to more about his specific views in coaching, but the second time I was really thinking about how his specific views on goal setting and monitoring progress are exactly what we should be doing when it comes to goal setting and monitoring progress for our, educating ourselves and increasing our skill level, and also in how we goal set and monitor progress for our career. And so I was just pulling for those kinds of analogies. Really, really fascinating. Very applicable.
Yeah, I like that. And I like the way that Randall talked about sometimes what you say your goal isn't really your goal. It's a level or two deeper. And I think it's that analysis that you mentioned, the self-reflection, that helps you get there. One of the other things I was also thinking about is this idea of body performance optimization. We didn't really talk about exercise a lot here, but we talked about fueling our bodies with the right stuff. So if I eat something that's really greasy and makes me feel bad, I'm not going to be able to think as clearly and perform as optimally in my job. And I've thought a lot about that over the past couple of years since I've completely cut sweets out of my diet. And before I eat something, I think about how it's going to make me feel. And if I know it's going to make me feel bad, it's pretty easy to not eat it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, and something that I think it was a little bit unconscious for me, but it's, obvious on the surface that that's exactly what he's talking about. When you have things that post-lunch lull, or, that first meeting, after everybody's eaten breakfast and, they're a little bit, more chipper because they've just had their coffee, all of those things, you think to yourself, what if I could do something to affect that, to kind of have a high level attention and high level energy, throughout the day, just feel your body differently to optimize your performance, optimize your learning, optimize your attention. So, all of that was really good too.
And it's all these things, time of day that you intake, how much, when you start thinking about it. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, really interesting. So with that in mind, let's get into part 2 of our discussion with Randall Cook. Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the things that you've learned and that you teach now as part of your practice. I think we started to touch on it, hydration, humidity, but I feel like there's a whole host of things that people are missing out on when they are, working from an office or working from home, but, maybe even doubly so when working from home, because, you just kind of have that, oh, well, I'm at home and I want to relax, and there's no transition, from home to work and work to home. So we don't really have anything there.
Actually, why don't you just make sure and level set with everybody and just say what the depth of a holistic wellness coach entails? Because I'm not sure that everybody listening is going to know.
All right. So Um, Part of it depends on how much the person wants to do, is because I can't help somebody beyond what they want to do. I and that's why I'm a coach and not I don't treat people. I coach people. You know, you go to a doctor, you get pills, you're being treated. It's happening to you. What I do is I help people help themselves. I teach them what they need to do to take care of themselves, really. But it goes, it starts with getting clear on what you really want out of this. So many people want to lose 10 pounds. Well, 10 pounds is a goal, but it's not the destination. Usually there's something behind the 10 pounds they want. And the deal is you get trapped in looking at losing that weight. And if that's your focus, then you're just going to look at ways to reach that goal, even if that method is going to hurt what you actually want out of it. Because the truth is, your goals should always point towards your vision. Should always lead you to the life you want. But when you stay focused on the goal, you get off course a lot of the time. It makes, for me anyway, it's like you get obsessed with this goal and reaching this goal, and you forget why you're even going after the goal. So the first part is getting clear on what you're really wanting out of this, um, and then
Well, I think just that clarity is important, right? I mean, for example, I mean, you talk about, the weight, it's like, well, if I want to lose 10 or 15 pounds, like, why do you want to lose 10 or 15 pounds? Just like, because that's the actual real reason that you need to address. I mean, I don't remember who told me this. It was like, like a human leg might weigh 10 or 15 pounds. So if you wanted to lose that weight, would chopping off one of your legs like accomplish your goal? It's like, oh no, that compromises my mobility. Plus, like, what I really wanted was to like look better in a specific shirt or outfit. It's like, oh, okay, well now we're like kind of uncovering what it is that you really wanted. So, like making that the goal instead of the metric, that you picked to represent that goal. Like that makes sense to me.
right, exactly. That's a perfect illustration. And then from there, we what I do is I have some very detailed questionnaires that go into like the symptoms you're having, like to evaluate how all the different parts of your body are functioning. Um, Whether you real and it's so in depth, and it's actually like prompted questions, so you don't have to say, well, I don't like the way this happens and I don't like the way this happens. It's like, okay, how is this? Is it this or this? You know, how often do you go to the, how often do you poop? Is it this? Is it, every day? Is it, multiple times a day? Is it once a week? Um, because you can't depend on, because especially when you're trying to assess somebody, you can't depend on their level of understanding. Because, like I said, I had a lot of clues that I wasn't well, but I didn't understand them. So if you'd asked me, I'd say, yeah, I'm pretty healthy. I started, by the end of college, I had a few blood sugar issues, but no, nothing really unexpected based on my family history. Um, but so the assessment kind of takes that out of it, and then I've got a different one that's kind of simpler. That's just like different habits you have, like how often do you buy your food? Because if you only shop like once a month, that can be really great for the budget. But like produce actually loses its nutrient value as it sits in your fridge. So the fresher really is the better then, and the less often you buy, the more you're relying on packaged products. And um, that one, I like that one as a teaching tool, really, because it as you do it, it shows you the scores for each answer, so you can kind of see what the better answer is, and then if you care about it, you can come back and ask me why. Um, and so, but once we do the assessment, then together I go over it with you, and together we come up with one or two things that you want to change, no more than three. Um, I read a quote in a book and I just ran across it today, but it was basically the wise man. uh, fears to move forward or to learn something new until he has learned how to do what he just learned. Is like instead of amassing all this knowledge before putting it into practice, it's, oh, I learned something new. I need to actually learn it through doing now. Um, and that's with everything. It's that way, and especially when you're trying to make changes to your life, to your habits, it gets overwhelming really quick.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, and plus, if you get a benefit, you don't know which change really brought along that benefit, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to drink more water, and I'm going to eat less red meat, and I'm going to cut out, crackers from my diet. It's like, oh wow, I feel really better. Well, maybe, was it the crackers, or was it the red meat, or was it the water? I mean, what, or was it all three of those things combined? And can you maintain like all three changes, right?
Right. And then on top of those three, just think if you say, okay, well, I'm going to start getting going to bed at 8 o'clock and getting up at 5, and going to work out every day of the week for at least 30 minutes, and you just keep adding, and okay, you may be able to do that for like 3 days if you're Superman, uh, but it but you're already by picking so many things, you are guaranteeing that you're not going to achieve it. And most likely, at least one of those is going to hit a trigger for you that you may or may not know about. And from my own experience of food is a big trigger. um, and there's no good or bad about it. It just is very emotional for everybody. I had one of my instructors was he'll say it. He wakes up thinking about making coffee, and it's actually not just the coffee itself, but he grew up with in a Cuban family, and every Saturday they would sit down, the parents and the kids, and have coffee together. So when he has coffee, he's remembering that. Um,
Well, food is so primal, and then scents and sounds are like those kind of shortcuts into the primal part of the brain, right? Like just so
right,
strongly associative. So, sense memory is really, really powerful. So, I mean, like whenever I smell Earl Grey, like it like shocks me right back, almost exactly the same way that you talked about to when I was a kid and, you know, um, smelling my mother making tea in the morning. So it's that hits home pretty hard. Yeah, food is primal.
right, and like my wife's family, her dad has had a lot of health problems, and so they've tried different eating methods over the years, um, and so that brings its own set of associations, um, and it can get very complicated very fast. For some people, turkey may remind them of the fights at the Thanksgiving dinner table, but other people, it's nostalgic and makes them think about family and home. So each person is different, and if they're not willing to even acknowledge them, the associations, then they're not going to ever successfully change their eating habits.
That's so interesting because I remember it's been a year or more ago. On my birthday, my grandmother would make me this massive, gooey chocolate chip cookie cake. And actually, a Texas cow chip, to be specific. Oatmeal, cornflakes, chocolate chip. Fantastic, right? So I don't feel like I ate a lot that particular night, but man, I puked my guts out after this, and I haven't wanted to eat anything sweet since. Just, no, I'm done. I'm finished with sweets. The
Yeah,
attachment is there, and I'm against it.
yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I know. I've especially my mom's friends have talked about when they were pregnant. Like they would, I remember one friend smelled pork chops cooking when she was pregnant with one of her children, and just made her sick. And she hadn't had one since then, and that child was a teenager, I believe. For me, I've struggled with sodas and cookies, and it took me a good while of sort of introspection to figure out that the sodas honestly but there were pleasant associations with each, and honestly by giving myself those treats, I was making myself feel special during a stressful time. Um, and then you couple that with just the natural high you get from sugar and its addictive quality. It makes it really hard.
Sure, food as like self medication is a big deal too, right?
Right. Yeah. Honestly, one of the startling things for me was I was listening to a podcast one day, and it was talking about PTSD for veterans. I believe this is a podcast, and they actually did a study because some treatments, like the medical treatments they do with prescription meds and all that, were successful for some people and not successful at all for others. And one of the factors for that was the use of or excessive use of energy drinks like Monsters. The combination of sugar and caffeine, actually just that alone puts your system into a stress state. And so basically by, drinking 3 Monsters in a day, you're undoing any stress relaxation the medicine was doing.
Human body, so complex.
So how can we make better choices throughout our day, Randall, as we, whether I'm working from home and I'm going from conference call to conference call to conference call, and or I'm someone who is has to drive around and I just have time to go through a drive-through. What are some ways that I can do a little bit better with my choices?
So for me, the biggest one of the biggest helps um, was realizing that my food choices are not right or wrong. It's not wrong for me to eat a cookie. It's not wrong for me to eat a donut. But is it is this going to help me achieve the goal I want? Is this going to help or hinder the life I'm trying to get? That was a big game changer for me, because you can even get trapped in a cycle where you eat something that you know you shouldn't, so you feel the remorse. It becomes a habit to feel that way. So you unconsciously seek opportunities to make yourself feel bad. It sounds insane, but there it is. So you get clear. You get clear on what you want out of your life, um, and then you need to start becoming aware of what food will do to you. For me, um, especially when I got sick and before I really started eating better, there were days where I would sit at work and get almost nothing done because my brain just wasn't working, or like I'd be wasted all afternoon because I just couldn't think straight, which is not a really good thing when you're supposed to be on task and got projects to do, and you get like an hour and a half of work done in 4 hours. That afternoon slump is real, but you can make it. You can, if with the wrong choice, you can push it to all day. Um, so that the first step is just kind of getting clear on what you want from your food. Um, and I'll be honest. Like I said, I don't think there's bad choices about food or wrong choices. Um, and my last few months at my job was really stressful, and so I would purposely let myself have the donut and the coffee together. I knew it would hurt my performance long term, but it was a good stress. It was my way of coping with the stress, and I knew it. And it was a choice I made. I paid for it in different ways. So I don't exactly recommend that to people, but it is there, and it kept me from being everything I wanted to be, but it kept me functioning at in a place where I wasn't.
I
Kept me
kind of
from going in a
hear,
dark place.
yeah, I totally understand that, but I think maybe one of the things that I'm hearing from you is like making it a conscious choice instead of an unconscious one, where you consider it, you understand the choice that you're making, and you actually make a choice instead of just going on autopilot and and kind of like unconsciously grabbing this and that and and not making any choices, just drifting into, things that are harmful for your
Right,
goals.
right. You hit that on the nail. That was very well said. Um, and so once you're clear on what you want your food to do for you, like you want it to maximize your performance and keep your energy up, then you have to actually start being aware of what each food does to you. Because there's millions of chemical reactions happening in your body every second, and the exact mixture is unique to you. And so you have to learn what works for you. Um, and so the best way to do that is you keep a food journal. It's not just keeping track of what you eat, but it's keeping track of what you eat, what you drink when you drink it, and how you feel through the day. Like if you start having an energy slump, you write that down with a time. Or, and because it goes with other health issues. If you start, like if your head starts itching, you'd write that down. If you start getting a nagging cough, just things like that, and then you can start seeing patterns. You need data before you can make judgment. Um, and for when someone starts with me, I have a 10-day diet log they're supposed to fill out, and so it's got all of that. It has what kind of exercise they did, how they slept, um, how they, you know, it's not something we talk about in public very much, sadly, but even how their bowel movements were. So you can, because all of that are to give you clues to what's going on overall. Um, and then when you look at that, part of what I look at is the variety of foods. Because if you know, I don't know if you've heard the term monoculture. It, it comes up with like trees. Like if a city plants all oak trees, they have a much higher risk of having something come in and destroy all the trees all at once. Like all it takes is one bug that loves that kind of tree to come in, and it goes through it because they're all the same. And your body's no different. If you only have the same, I've heard that in the average lifetime, people eat like 20 foods. I've heard that the average person only eats about 10 different foods on a regular basis, which is not very much when you consider meats, vegetables, and starches and all that. 10 foods, you have pork, chicken, and beef. That's 3 foods right there. So you add in eggs. That's 4. Green, and then so that's like 5 different vegetables. And I know, I mean, just for my own example, the only vegetables I really liked growing up were corn and green beans. It's not much variety.
But those are two vegetables that people eat with butter. So
And bacon,
that's
the
true.
green beans, yeah.
Yeah. So, and so you want to make sure you are getting a variety. And also, even if you're not, and you can see a pattern as it emerges, and you can start playing with it. Okay, so like if I have this problem, okay, well, let's try eating a little differently. I actually ended up having to go to a holistic doctor who did some testing, and she identified 5 foods that were causing me problems. And I'm going to tell them to you so you can understand how hard this was for me. Um, it was egg yolks, specifically the yolks. Crazy, I know, but it's true. There were beans. There was casein, which is a milk protein, so that cut out pretty much all dairy except like butter, because that's mostly fat. Um, let's see, and then gluten, which is wheat. Um, that's the one pretty much every holistic person will tell you to avoid. Uh, I won't tell you it's bad, but I can tell you that it's overused and can cause some serious problems. And then the last one, which is the kicker, is it's called solanine. It's a compound found in nightshades. Nightshades are tomatoes, potatoes, chili peppers. bell peppers, paprika, eggplant. Alright, so I was told in January of 2018 that I needed to avoid those 5 foods if I wanted to actually get better. It's really hard to find food that doesn't have one of those 5 in it. You think about places that seem somewhat healthier, like Chipotle, because everything there is pretty clean and you get to pick what's in it. They have one meat that doesn't have pepper in it. I could have lettuce, rice, and their pork. And yeah, that was it. You can't actually ask specially for just avocado instead of guac because the guac has peppers in it and tomatoes. It was a very bland meal. And so it was quite the struggle for me, causing me a lot of mental anguish trying to find things to eat, especially eating out. Um, Almost, or sometimes to the point where I just didn't care anymore. Like I didn't care what I ate because I didn't at that I'd waited so long to try and make a choice that I no longer had the mental reserves to figure out what I could eat that would meet that. Thankfully, my wife is a very good person and would help me through those times and would try do her best to keep me on the diet.
I'm curious, once you were able to avoid those consistently despite the difficulty, could you feel a real difference without those foods and then maybe a noticeable difference when you consume them again?
Yes. So I honestly, to a large degree, I still avoid those foods. Um, I found I eat eggs for breakfast, but I have to cook them a certain way. I have to do them over easy. If the yolk is completely cooked, it doesn't digest right. So as long as it's still runny, it's all good. I don't eat very many tomatoes. They just don't sit well. Um, I don't have a lot of beans. I don't really try to avoid them. I just don't eat them as a side very often. I eat hardly any cheese. That's really my kryptonite, which is really hard when you go and you're trying to look for something healthier and you're like, well, a salad is pretty clean. If you go look at the fast food salads, almost every one of them has that cheese on it. Blue cheese is the worst for me. I would we Our office was above a Potbelly's, and they have some pretty good food, and I would go and get their salad, and it would have blue cheese on it every time, every time. I eventually found I could do. They had like a pick two. You could do a soup and a salad, and I get like their enchilada soup, which wasn't completely clean, but at this point it's sort of maintenance. And then I would get their salad with no cheese, and that would be just fine. So I don't eat much cheese. I've never been a big cheese lover though, so it was pretty easy for me. It's funny, but like my wife loves cheese. Like I don't think she's ever said anything was too cheesy. Um, but for me, there were often, uh, all through my life, there's often been things that like that's too much cheese. I just don't like that. So getting rid of cheese was easier for me. Um,
Were those things like specific to you and your body, or are they, do you feel like in general, like they each have like specific effects on people? Um, I guess what I'm asking is, should we all be avoiding those things, or was that just you who should be avoiding those things?
it's a little bit of both. It was very specific to me. Um, you know, your mileage definitely does vary, uh, but especially dairy in the U.S. Um, like if you go get a gallon of milk, it is pasteurized and homogenized. So when it's pasteurized, they kill off all the enzymes that would help you digest it, and then homogenization is actually putting it through a tiny filter that slices up all the fat cells so that they stay separate, mixed in. So it's not at all the natural state. Um, and then also just it gets into a really long discussion about food quality. Is and that's organic is better food, and there's a lot of reasons why. Um, and the way there's the pesticides, but there's also the way they feed them, and you're only as healthy as the food you eat, and the food you eat is only as healthy as the food it eats. And unfortunately, um, cattle in the U.S. are typically fed very poor diets. They're fed fattening diets, and the fastest way to fatten them is actually things that they don't digest. Basically, they get filled with filler.
Corn and soy.
Among other things, they actually do put like plastic-based items in their feed to fatten them up, and toxins.
Yum.
Yeah, and that's why that's part of the check system is that doesn't say that you need to eat this specific way. There are certain things everyone should avoid, but like as far as how much fat you need in your diet depends on you. Depends on your genetic heritage, depends on your health, your digestion. But you get this strange problem where most of so fat has two purposes. One purpose is to store energy. The other one is to isolate toxins that your body can't dispose of yet. And that's what part of what they do with cows is they overload them with toxins, so they put on a lot of fat. Well, when you get a nice piece of meat with a good marbling, all that fat still has that toxin in it. So you have this strange problem where we're designed to run on fat as well as protein and carbohydrates. Um, but if you eat normal, just the stuff you buy at the supermarket, you almost have to go on with lean meat so you don't get all the toxins in the fat. And so you kind of get this gap in your diet and between how you would eat and how you have to eat.
That's so interesting. I One of the things that you mentioned earlier on was food that you ate that kind of led to a mental fogginess. I was wondering if there's like an opposite of that, like things that we can do and eat that can actually help sharpen our mental acuity, like have that kind of long lasting energy, and instead of like, spikes and valleys, you know, um, I know if I load up on carbs at lunch, you're going to feel like I need a nap all day long. So, there's probably things that I probably should be doing to even that out, right?
So yes, there's how much food you eat and what food you eat. So when you eat too much food, your body has to devote more resources to digesting it. Because if it just sits in your inside of you, it will actually decay in an unhealthy way. So your body has to process it. And when you overload that, it has to devote more resources. So just eating too much can cause a drag on your system. On the other side, you want to what you're trying to manage is your insulin, your blood sugar level, and your insulin level. Um, and this is where I want to go off on the wrong tangent. So when you're under a lot of stress, your body actually converts protein into sugars for a more ready fuel source. So that even if you eat a low carb diet, even if you're doing keto, if you're under a lot of stress, your body is converting that directly into sugars, causing an insulin spike. So that's another challenge. But honestly, if you're not under a lot of stress, um, you want some good quality fats in there. I found sort of a hack I can do if I'm like doing a road trip and it's getting late at night, but I still have a long way to go. I can get some coffee and it's called MCT oil, medium chain triglyceride, and you put that in there, and those oils specifically will actually go almost directly to your brain to fuel it. Um, and that can give you a good mental boost for longer than just the coffee, and it actually cuts the jitters some, reduces the amount of stomach upset usually. because you actually use fat to digest. And so by putting it in there, you're giving your body something to help handle the coffee.
I actually came across this. I want to say there was a fad a couple years ago. A company called Bulletproof Coffee was kind of pushing this idea, but just the medium chain triglycerides, that kind of persisted past um, just this one company and its products, right?
Right. Yes. And it's actually interesting. I I actually like the Bulletproof Company. They put out. I don't agree with all of their approaches, but they put out really good, solid information that's pretty unbiased. But the Bulletproof Coffee actually came from a trip um, the founder took to, I believe it was Tibet, and one of the locals gave him yak butter tea, and that basically the combination of caffeine and fat that has was the foundation for bulletproof coffee. He actually dug into the science of how to replicate that and and then improve it with coffee. And so the MCT gets absorbed a little better than butter, a little faster, but you can use butter as well to get a similar effect.
Well, that's a cool little hack, but it sounds like um, there's no shortcuts, right? Like you probably in the medium to long term probably need to do the food log and then actually examine how things affect your body individually.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, getting control of your health all starts with awareness. Starts with awareness of the choices you're making and the effect they have on your life. Because until you have that, you're just throwing darts at the wall.
Hmm.
You blindfolded at that.
Right. This reminds me a little bit of the approach of this group. I don't remember if the movement is called Quantified Self or if it's just like one company, but the idea of doing like lots of different measurements of your body, including like exactly how you're sleeping, like the quality of sleep that you're getting, what your blood pressure is on a regular basis, pulse ox and all these different things, measuring everything and then making small tweaks, coming up with a hypothesis, making a change, seeing how it affects you, and then seeing whether like your hypothesis was proven or not, and then making another change, based on the observations, very like kind of scientific method, right? And it just like I said, it just was like an association or just triggered a memory of this thing. I think we've talked about it before.
Right. And that's the deal. Is like also as you do this journey, you're starting from where you are now, because that's the only place you can start. Well,
Hmm.
as you change your diet and change your sleeping patterns, your hydration, your body will change, and
Right.
its needs are actually going to change too.
Mm.
So if you're eating the same way in 4 years that you're eating, tomorrow, you're probably not actually helping yourself as much as you think.
Now, here's my question. It sounds like the food journal will give me a nice baseline. Maybe I that allows me to experiment a little bit. Are there ways to go about doing this without seeking professional help? I'm not saying that's bad, but can I do it on my own with enough education?
Absolutely. That's I did go see that holistic doctor, but and this is I I valued what she gave me, but she never empowered me to take control of my own health. It was very much a dependent relationship on her. I would go to her and she would tell me what was wrong and what I needed to do to fix. But she never tried to give me the tools to navigate it myself. And that's why I'm a coach, is I'm not here to hold your hand for the rest of your life. My goal is to give people the tools they need to take control of their lives so they don't need me. And you can do it on your own. Um, it's a lot of work. and it's really hard to do without somebody having outside eyes
I
because
mean, that's the
it's
power of any coaching, right? It's like like a neutral third party to look at you and go, well, here's something you need to fix. Right?
right, exactly.
And that kind of helps you achieve that awareness, but in a non-judgmental way. As you said, it's not good or bad, this is just how it is. It sounds very much like the some of the tools from Inner Game of Stress that we talked about several episodes ago.
Oh yeah, it is very much the same, isn't it? It's like
At least a little.
the non-judgmental observation.
Yeah.
Well, Randall, let's like bounce back and forth between the hacks and the hard work. So we talked about a little bit about some hacks and we talked a little bit about some hard work. Like let's get into like another like maybe more like tactical thing. We're all leading pretty busy lives. Are there any tips and tricks that we can use to kind of make those decisions about food ahead of time for when we're busy so that we don't have to make a decision like right at lunchtime or right at dinner time or right at breakfast time?
Oh, absolutely. Like so, especially when I was very strict. We had to get on and find fast food places that had foods that I could fit eat. Because you can't wait till you pull up to the drive-through to figure out you know which one of these has tomatoes, which one of these has dairy. And the internet is a beautiful thing sometimes, and especially these days with all the food allergies, most of the companies actually have things like that listed. They won't have everything, but a lot of them either under nutritional information or allergen listings. Um, for me, an eye opener was going to the Panda Express allergen list, and they show you about 8 or 10 different allergens that might be in their foods, and they go through each dish, and every single one had gluten, or at least everyone with meat. And as I learned more, I realized, and I posted about this, but like their teriyaki chicken, the reason it has gluten, to my knowledge, is because the sauce, teriyaki sauce, is made with flour.
Yeah, as a thickener, right?
Right. So if you get it, you can get it without the sauce. And so, I really don't like going places and modifying my order. I remember I was a picky eater as a kid, and we go to Taco Bell, and all I wanted was a beef burrito with beef and cheese, nothing else. And it wasn't too bad when I was younger because they had a beef burrito, a simple beef burrito on the menu. Then they actually took it off the cash register. They had to bring it up as a bean burrito, minus the beans, plus the beef, minus the onions, minus the red sauce. And I just got so tired of that, going through that process every time, that I eventually just started eating other things only so I wouldn't have to go through that, which is terrible to say, but there it is. And that, and I've gotten a little more comfortable, but it's still, I I like to order off the menu. I like to say, okay, give me that combo. Yeah, the way it comes, no changes. Just give me that. Um,
There's also this pressure of how we think other people are going to perceive us getting this super special order. Like, oh, you're such a health nut, or why do you have to make things so complicated?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I was such a picky eater. I mean, like I said, I would only eat green beans and corn. For vegetables, I wouldn't even eat mashed potatoes. Those were nasty to me. The only way I'd eat potato was fried.
That is the Texas way, isn't it?
It's the best way. Um, and so, people would, not my immediate family, but other people would kind of make comments about being a picky eater, and those wear at you over time. And so I just developed this aversion to wanting to order special. It's like I'll eat it the way it comes or I won't eat it. I don't want to have to order special and then hope they get it right, because that's very frustrating. Is when they get your special order wrong.
It's the worst of both worlds, right?
Right.
Because you had to go through the process of ordering in a specific way, and then you didn't get it that way, so you don't even get the benefit. It sounds to me like you're talking about putting in some work ahead of time, so that you don't have to make choices and decisions like in the moment, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. That's the only way to do it.
so kind of knowing all, like if it's about fast food or restaurants, kind of doing a survey and going, well, where's the like top 10 or 15 places that I know that I'm going to go to in the next month, and what is it that I can eat that's going to fit my diet and be a good compromise between, flavor and health, or whatever my health goals are, and then knowing that that's what I'm going to order when I go there, right?
Right. Yeah. Especially, it's not, if you're stuck at home right now, it's not such a big deal. But, if you work in an office somewhere and you go out to lunch, pick out the 5 or 10 places you like and figure out what you can eat there. If you can figure out 2 or 3 things you can eat there, but then you'll at least have that. You get there, you're tired, you're hungry, you just want to eat. You know exactly what you can get. You don't have to make a decision because that's all decided, and you've already made that decision because of what the result you want from your lunch.
I guess there's always the pre-planning what you're going to take for lunch based on what you know will, not affect your health in a negative way, right? Maybe shop for the week. I know you said more frequent trips to the grocery store was better. Is it, should we shop for a week at a time, maybe just a few days at a time? What do you think there?
As far as like meat goes, honestly, on the week is fine. Uh, for optimal, if you fits with your life, probably twice a week for produce. But again, for me, you, I try to keep eating as less of a stress as possible. And so if it's a stress to try and get to the store second time in a week or to work all of that out budget wise or whatever, then to me it's not worth it. The return's not worth it because the stress alone is actually a drain on your system. So if you make this food, eating healthy, a stressor for you, you're undoing a lot of the good that you would be doing.
That makes sense. Now, I mean that really strikes a chord with me, right? Like if you're adding stress to your life by trying to, do all these things and, worry about them, like first of all, you're probably making too many changes all at once, right? Because that's one of the first things that we talked about, is like making those changes gradually. And then yeah, if what you're doing is like, it's a net negative because of all the stress and all the bother, then then it's like, well, then it's a net negative, right? You would have been better off not doing any of it, especially if you can't maintain it. So um
Right.
yeah.
And
Anything.
especially when you're eating out and having to try and make those choices, if you find that stressful, then you absolutely have to do it ahead of time because when you start getting stressed, you stop digesting food. So you are literally hurting yourself by eating at that point.
And then when you have the comfort food, you digest it even less, and the indigestion goes up, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I really like the observations that you're making about the way that, our emotional state and mental state can affect the way that we are processing the food, right? So you can eat eat all the right things, but if you're not in the right mental state or not the right health state, like that doesn't actually help, right? You can undo all that with excessive stress. So I imagine that that's kind of like, oh, if you're in fight or flight, like mental state, then your body goes, oh, okay, then we need to process all this stuff into sugar because we're either going to run away or we're going to have to fight, right?
Exactly.
So putting ourselves, like doing the things that we need to do to de-stress our lives, is an important part of having or achieving our health goals, because not changing that one thing can maybe undo a bunch of the other stuff.
Right. Yeah. One of the things my instructors have stressed about eating is like don't watch something stressful that you know is going to be stressing you out while you eat. So don't watch the news while you eat because pretty much I mean that's what it's designed to do is it's designed to get you upset about something, agitated, either angry or you're going to be sad. Just it's trying to pull your emotions, and that's going to mess up your ability to digest your food, which is and then also you don't want to watch something too exciting like a Jason Bourne movie or The Walking Dead because that also is much more enjoyable, but still a very high adrenaline response, which again, fight or flight. You're there, you're ready to fight with them. You're all amped up, and so you're gonna seriously hamper the digestion of your food.
Is it better to not be in front of a screen while you're eating? Like take time away from the desk and just sit down and not look at a screen, maybe listen to something, read a book, I don't know.
It definitely is, and one of the really I find the whole all of it really interesting. So I try not to say it. One of the really interesting things, but I say it a lot because I do find it really interesting, is that digestion actually starts in the brain. Um, it actually starts with the acknowledgement, mental acknowledgement that you're about to take in food to feed your body. So when you do it distracted, if you're busy watching something or reading something or working on something, we've probably each had the experience where you just didn't really taste your food, right? Well, your body is not actually receiving it properly at that point. You're not producing all the enzymes to digest it. So the more focused you can be with your eating, the better it works out.
I
That
did
makes
not know that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like you're paying attention to your eating, then like that's just better for how you're processing the food. Yeah. I mean, it seems so simple, but it's not something that we really, probably take the time to like measure on our own, right? And if somebody goes, "Oh, I don't believe that at all," it's like all they really need to do to prove that to themselves is to like experiment and see how well they digest the exact same meal, like one eaten mindfully and one eaten distractedly, right?
Exactly.
I would imagine that you may end up eating more than you should if you're watching something, doing something else.
Usually, yeah. Um, I know, especially in the afternoons, I eat from boredom. I like to snack all afternoon. Um, and I have come to realize it's not because I'm actually hungry, it's just because I'm bored and I want something to do with my mouth. And I think something similar also happens when we're distracted. Our body is telling us, yeah, you need to eat, but we're not really paying attention. And so the signals aren't really lining up the way they're supposed to.
Good stuff. Well, I know we've taken a lot of your time today, Randall, and I don't want to take too much more, but maybe just as we wrap, any closing thoughts, words of wisdom for listeners out there, and maybe how they can get in touch with you if they want to talk more?
For me, it all starts with becoming aware there's a problem and then wanting to change it. And that's where everything starts, whether it's your career, whether it's your health. Um, and until someone is aware and until somebody wants to change it, no one else can make something happen. So, if anybody wants to find out more about me, I am Shield Wolf Wellness on Instagram and Facebook. And if you find me there, that'll take you to my website.
Awesome. And is that something that you can do remotely, like people kind of across the country, wherever they may be?
Yes.
Oh, that's super exciting. Okay.
And it all starts, I guess, with an initial consultation. That's how it works.
Right. Yeah. We'll get on a call together. Make sure we're a good fit because we're building a team and a team needs to get along and have the same goals.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, Randall, thanks so much for joining us on the Nerd Journey podcast. And we'll definitely include links in the show notes to people who want to look you up and links to some of the resources that you mentioned over time. So thanks a lot for stopping by.
Well, thank you, Nick and John. It's been fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Lots of fun. Take care.
John, all I could think of when he was talking about how food choices shouldn't be viewed as good or bad was inner game of stress.
Oh, yeah.
This non-judgmental awareness, not classifying as good or bad, but what is.
Right. Yeah, that choice that was made, whatever has happened, without judgment, and then moving forward, based on like the facts of the outcome, right? Not saying, hey, I'm a terrible person. And yeah, like making that connection like during the episode and then listening back to it, just kind of reinforcing that, really, really makes a lot of sense. The thing that I took away, the second time that kind of picked out was the food log, right? If you're trying to like improve something, you kind of have to collect data, right? So it just reminds me of something that I've been doing recently. I've been kind of working through the book Learning Python the Hard Way. And one of the things that the book author has you do is kind of just do something, every day on that book. So like I've been just kind of keeping like a log of all my experiences, and observations as I work my way through the book and its exercises. And, just it really like you cannot like examine something without changing it, right? So just little things and tips there that, I found, really helpful, not only with technology, but with eating, too. So, great, great stuff.
And this idea of journaling, as you mentioned, really helps you see your progress over time. It actually reminded me of one of your, I can't remember which episode it was, but you talked about a new way to document your work since you've been working for Google Cloud and making sure that you consistently do document the things that you're doing almost in the same way that the food journal helps you.
Right, right. To kind of track like your activities and the things that you're learning and the things that you've accomplished. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very analogous to that. All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, just a reminder, we want to have people subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter @NerdJourney.
All right. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White @VJourneyman on Twitter. For Nick Cordy @NetworkNerd_. Signing off.
Adios. Fuel that body.
Joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy @NetworkNerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
John, any better and I'd be John White, I have to tell you. We are both pre-sales technical engineers.
I need to not react when you do that.
It was your reaction that got me. Like, if you hadn't reacted, I could have just kept going. I should have tried not to look at you at all. I should have just covered up the window. All right.